In the autumn of 2023, Margaret Thompson received a collection of old family photographs from her grandmother's estate. Among the yellowed papers and faded memories was a silver-framed wedding photograph dated 1910. It showed her great-great-grandparents Eleanor and Thomas Mitchell on their wedding day in Chicago. At first glance, the picture looked ordinary, a typical Edwardian wedding portrait of a young woman in an elaborate white dress standing beside a man in formal clothes. But closer examination revealed a strange detail. Eleanor's face was sharp and clear, while her husband's face was deliberately blurred. The blur was not caused by camera movement or poor focus. It was a careful chemical change made to the photograph after it had been developed, using techniques that professional photographers knew in 1910. Early research into the family history showed that Eleanor Mitchell lived until 1954 and appeared in many Chicago records. Thomas Mitchell, however, seemed to vanish from official documents after the wedding date of June 15, 1910. Census records, city directories, and death certificates contained no further trace of him. This complete absence, together with the altered photograph, suggested that Thomas had been intentionally erased from the family's documented history. The question that drove the investigation was simple, yet serious. What circumstances in 1910 America would force a new bride to chemically hide her husband's identity in their wedding picture? In January 2024, the photograph was examined at the Chicago History Museum's Conservation Laboratory. Dr. Patricia Reeves, a specialist in early 20th century photography, used modern spectroscopic tests to study the image. She found that the blurring had been created by applying a silver bromide solution selectively to Thomas's facial features after the original photograph was developed. The chemical composition and aging patterns showed that the change had been made within months of the wedding, not years later. Under ultraviolet light, faint traces of the original image could still be seen. Advanced digital enhancement techniques allowed researchers to partially reconstruct Thomas's appearance, a young man with dark hair, strong features, and a small scar on his left cheek. City records confirmed that Eleanor had worked as a darkroom assistant at Morrison's studio on State Street before her marriage. Her skill in photographic retouching explained how she was able to make such a professional alteration herself. Chicago in 1910 was a city full of social and political tension. Labor strikes were frequent. Immigration from Europe was at a high level, and the police maintained close surveillance on anyone considered politically suspicious. The Chicago Police Department's Red Squad, set up after the Haymarket Affair in 1886, kept extensive files on suspected anarchists, labor organizers, and radicals. Irish immigrants faced particular scrutiny because of the independence movement in Ireland and the fear that some might be raising money or organizing support for it. Newspapers regularly published warnings about foreign agitators who refused to assimilate. Being photographed at a union meeting or strike could lead to unemployment, harassment, or even deportation for non-citizens. Employment records at the Pullman Railway Car Company listed a T. Mitchell as a skilled metal worker from March 1909 until June 1910. His job ended suddenly just before the wedding. Immigration documents pointed to a 24-year-old metal worker from Belfast who had entered the United States through New York in 1908. Company security files from May 1910 named him as a suspected agitator among the Irish workers and recommended close monitoring. The decisive event came on June 12, 1910, only 3 days before the wedding. Workers at Pullman tried to hold a union meeting. Company security, supported by Chicago police, arrived and attempted to photograph the participants. A confrontation followed. Several workers were arrested, but one Irish metal worker, identified in the police report only as TMI, violently resisted being photographed, destroyed camera equipment, and escaped in the confusion. A warrant for his arrest was issued 2 days later on charges of destroying company property and inciting a riot. His description was circulated to police stations across the city. Eleanor's own writings confirmed the danger. In a letter to her sister in July 1910, she wrote that Thomas could no longer appear in public because the men watching the factory gates would recognize him. In a diary entry the following month, she recorded that she had altered their wedding portrait so that his face would not be recognizable if anyone searched their belongings. The wedding itself had been a private ceremony at St. Patrick's Cathedral with only 2 witnesses present, highly unusual for an Irish Catholic marriage of that period. The priest noted that the service was conducted under special circumstances at the bride's request. Eleanor continued working at the photography studio throughout 1910 and 1911, supporting both of them on her single wage while Thomas remained in hiding. Further investigation revealed that the couple received help from an informal network of Irish-American organizations, progressive churches, and sympathetic individuals. Father Michael O'Brien, who performed the marriage, was known for assisting Irish immigrants facing political trouble. Community funds provided occasional anonymous deposits into Eleanor's bank account. Safe houses and coded letters allowed Thomas to stay out of sight. By late 1911, political attention had shifted. The arrest warrant was quietly withdrawn in November. In December, Thomas resumed work under his own name at another metalworking firm on the South Side. In 1912, the couple appeared together for the first time in the Chicago City Directory, finally able to live openly as husband and wife. They raised 2 children and rebuilt a quiet life. Thomas became a naturalized American citizen in 1918 and worked as a respected metalworker until his death in 1943. Eleanor lived until 1954. She never remarried and never publicly explained the blurred face in the wedding photograph, treating it as a private family matter. The picture was passed down through generations who sensed its importance but did not know the full story. The Chicago History Museum now displays the Mitchell wedding photograph as part of an exhibition on political persecution in early 20th century America. The deliberately obscured face stands as a powerful reminder of how ordinary families were forced to hide their identities in order to survive periods of intense surveillance and fear. Eleanor's decision to chemically erase her husband's features shows both the personal cost of political repression and the quiet courage required to protect the people one loves.